So I never actually explained why I bought consulting.com, or at least here on this YouTube channel. I'll leave a link in the description to my main channel where I kind of high level covered it. So that's a little bit of a longer video if you want to watch that. But for this business channel, I will get a little bit more into the nitty gritty, maybe some stuff I wouldn't talk about publicly on the main channel, maybe some details that aren't well known, and explain why I bought consulting.com. I said a little bit about the company, the way it was run previous to my ownership, and what I plan on doing it, because it's this massive monster legacy business in our industry. And I saw some comments where people thought I just bought the domain. No, I did not just buy the domain. I bought everything the company ever was and is. And that means all of the intellectual property, all of the handles, all the testimonials, email list, and of course, you know, the domain, which is this. I guess on the day, it depends. Obviously, it's the domain market, when we're talking about multiples of millions, is a very illiquid market. So it's worth about $3 to $5 million if, you know, you're willing to wait a year, 2 years. If I had to fire sale it, it would be about $1.2 to $1.5 million if I had to get rid of it, you know, quite quickly like that. So yeah, let me put the camera down and I'll explain. So consulting.com, that was previously owned by Sam Ovens and Ryan Doris, did roughly about $75 to $80 million in revenue. And from that, did about $12 million, which is what the previous owners told me. I would need to look into the exact documents, but it was about $12 million in profit from my recollection. As I said, not exact numbers. So the first reason I bought consulting.com was actually for its intellectual property. Not only Consulting Accelerator, but Up-Level Consulting. People paid roughly about $80 million for those products. And I took those two products and gave it to all of my previous customers for free. Now, obviously, something like Consulting Accelerator, all of my agency program customers that paid anywhere from a K, I think some of them paid as low as even $800 up to $1,500. You know, I ran that program, or multiple variations of it. Obviously, every year, year and a half, 2 years, I would update that program and come out with a new updated version of it with new information, sort of the latest and greatest. But anyways, all that to say, I do like the fact that all of those customers literally got a product for free, that it's not like, oh, fake value, it's worth X amount. Like, no, really, people paid, as far as I remember, these aren't precise numbers, right around $65, $70 million for Consulting Accelerator. So I do like the fact that a program that the market paid tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars for at a $2,000 price point, my customers got that, you know, entirely for free. You know, there are customers of mine that bought the program in 2018 and now all of a sudden are still getting benefits to this day. And I'm very bad at talking about those things, but I think for you guys here on the business channel, you don't really care about that much. You're not really, that's not the juicy stuff. That's not the stuff that you guys want to hear. So yeah, that was one component of it, is the intellectual property. I knew that when I made the purchase, not only would all of my historical customers get access to it, but potentially I would be able to make use of it in future as, you know, potentially bonuses, as add-ons, as bolt-ons. I would never sell it as a standalone offer. Now, I'll be honest, I know that I could sell all of the Consulting Accelerator and Up-Level programs just on its own for many, many multiples of millions, enough to cover what I paid for the business. Obviously, the domain is worth anywhere from $3 to $5 million. So for what I paid for it, which by the way is more than 7 figures, it's less than 8 figures. I'll let you guess how much I paid for it. I'm not going to disclose it here, but it's in that region. I saw a comment somewhere and they were like, yeah, you paid 10K for it. The business is worth nothing. Okay, cool. Well, let's imagine I just bought the domain. That's already a multi-million-dollar domain. So yeah, the internet is a very funny place at times. I knew that with the purchase of the company, you know, this legacy business, that just the domain in of itself would make my purchase a safe one. It would basically mean that I would get all the intellectual property for free, and be able to give it to all my customers. And then in future, as I said, be able to use it as bonuses, add it to the offer stack, etc., etc. So that was the first reason. The second reason is I saw a lot of benefit in rebranding 8FL, which is 8-figure license, which is basically our B2B offer. We work with the top info, coaching, knowledge businesses in the world and really help them scale up. And scaling, by the way, we've had clients of ours that have come to us. You know, we had one client last year that did $120 million in revenue. We've had clients come to us where we're actually looking to scale down, but increase profitability. I have always been, and I will continue to always be, a massive proponent for bottom line in the info space. I think a lot of people were very shocked with, unfortunately, with one of the previous owners, at least the way that consulting.com was run. In 2018, once again, these are not exact numbers. This is just as far as I know. And obviously, I'm very close to the business considering I bought it. As far as I remember, in 2018, the revenue was $36 million. And I know the profit was anywhere from $1 to $3 million in that range. As far as I know, it's actually closer to 1 and not 3. But the point is, for me, running an info business at 10% net margins, I just don't see the point. And I have always said, as an example, I would much rather do 6 million in revenue to bring back in, let's say 3.5 million in profit, than do 10 million in revenue to bring back in 4.5 million in profit. Because you're almost doubling the revenue. And whenever you're almost doubling the amount of customers, I guess that isn't a true double going from 6 to 10, but you understand, whatever that is, more than 50%, a 60% jump in revenue. You're increasing the amount of customers, the amount of headache, the amount of ad spend, there's just so many variables that go into it. And for me, really, info, coaching, knowledge businesses, they're really meant to be the best cash flow businesses in the world. And that's really what we helped our clients at 8FL do, is have these businesses that are just obnoxiously, ridiculously, aggressively profitable. And to me, that's what these businesses are built for. And by the way, that is never, ever, ever at the cost of making great products. It's funny, I've heard many people come at me and make comments out of spite. I'm not dumb. I know why people make comments. It's out of spite. It's out of jealousy. I'll call it what it is. And they'll come at me with a 15K coaching program and they'll say, oh, but he doesn't make great products. And it's like, you're trying to compare my $1,500 product, which in the past you would get a one-on-one coach, like an actual one-on-one coach for 6 weeks. You have 6 one-on-one coaching sessions, plus 20 group sessions, plus 6 or 8 or 10 programs taught by the best professionals in the world. You would have one person with a 15K coaching program who would teach outreach on a software like Instantly or Lemlist. And on my $1,500 program, I would have the owner of Lemlist teaching outreach. So these things aren't cheap. A lot of these things are actually just relationship and respect based. And by the way, the reason I'm saying this is not really to dunk on anyone. I think it's more just to say that, even our $1,500 offer right now, there are businesses where we have to license. Like there's one business I'm going to pay about $1.5 million this year to actually have the ability to license their software. So the reason I say that is because I still think you always have to put your customer first, and you always have to invest in your product as much as humanly possible. And once again, buyconsultant.com, which is a very large 7-figure check, that's a case where I'm investing in my product, where all my historic customers get this for free, and I don't make any more money from these people. It's not like I'm going to them and going, oh, send me $300, or here's the WAP link for an extra $300 or $400. It's like, no. This is free. I know that you bought the program 7 years ago, but this is my little gift to you. So I am a massive, massive proponent in investing into your product and your service delivery. I'm not as massive a proponent in investing in bloated teams that are, quite frankly, just ungrateful, that quite frankly are overpaid, because a lot of times they're, US-based employees, and you're basically paying for their $5,000 a month rent, not really based on their merit or their talent. I'm not for spending aggressively on ads when it's not profitable. I would actually rather scale down revenue, put your ego to the side and instead focus on profitability. So once you get past making great products for your customers, and you get to the actual topic of, how do we run the business past that? Because for me, this is a cost that should always, you should always put money towards these things. This is where I look at the rest of the business and I go, let's put our ego to the sides. I don't care what your revenue is. I've always said in the info space, don't tell me your revenue, tell me your profit. If you're doing 20 million a year in revenue, I don't care. Like, what's the profit on that? Because by the way, the other thing you need to understand is more customers doesn't mean a better customer experience. And that's the other thing, when I hear people talk about long-term thinking or this or that, I'm like, yeah, you say long-term thinking, or you say you care about your customers, but you're funneling more and more customers into your product, and that doesn't make your product better. That technically makes your product worse. Now, if you have the means to actually, reinvest in the correct support systems or the right tools or whatever, that's fine. But if more revenue doesn't mean a better experience of the business for you personally, and more revenue doesn't mean a better experience for your customers, it's just a lose-lose. Now, there's situations where maybe more revenue means a worse experience for you, but a better experience for your customers, or maybe, more revenue means potentially a worse experience for your customers, but, a better experience for you. Everything in life is a toss-up between you as a business owner and your customers. And you have to be practical and you have to be pragmatic about these things. But all that to say that I've always just been very disillusioned by the info space, and that's really our mission. At previously once was 8FL, and now is Quantum. So we have consultant.com, that is the company. Then we have Quantum, which 8FL is now rebranding into. We're bringing back Quantum. And that's really my focus, is just help info, coaching, knowledge-based businesses just be disgustingly profitable. Because for me, that's all that matters. And then, what do you actually do with that money? That's a topic for another day. How do you actually treat yourself as your own investment fund, which is the way I view myself. And then you take the cash flow from this business and then you use that to invest in, whether that's very safe stuff, each their own, whether that's writing, large checks for businesses that are strategic. I can talk a lot about that. But once again, that's a topic for another video. I don't want to talk about that here. That's not the point of this video. But 2 reasons: take the intellectual property, give that to all my customers for free. Second reason, and obviously, you know, up level, which used to be, I know it sold for $5,800. I think by the end it was, don't quote me on this, it was selling at $9,800. All of my customers that bought like Monetize Pro or even Agency Accelerator Pro, you know, or we even had a higher level agency program. All of these programs cost less than up level. So we actually gave all of our customers not only Consulting Accelerator, but also up level Accelerator. So number one, it was for the intellectual property. I think there's actually a lot of value in that, which is why I bought it. I guess from a pragmatic perspective, which isn't technically one of the reasons, but I'll include it in here, is the actual valuation of the domain, which made it a very, I guess for me at least, no-brainer purchase. So that's number one, the intellectual property. The second reason is actually elevate the brand for 8FL, 8-figure license, which is now Quantum under Consultant.com. Obviously, you know, Consultant.com is such a great name for what we are, which is a consulting firm and an advisory firm. We work with B2B clients. We don't work with beginners. We work with very, very serious business owners. As I said, we have info, knowledge, coaching businesses that do $500K a year, all the way to our top client did $120 million last year. So I just thought it would be a nice little rebrand. And the third reason, and I think I kind of alluded to, I kind of spoke about here, is I think it's just a bit of like a, not a chip on the shoulder, but just a little bit of like a, you know, everyone talks about like long-term thinking, but I don't listen to what someone says. And I think as you get further along in life, I think you just have to be very careful listening to what someone says, because a lot of times people can say very fancy things or nice sounding things. And unfortunately, their actions aren't really aligned with that. So a lot of people talk about long-term thinking, or a lot of people talk about all this complex stuff. But then when you look at the way they run their business, it doesn't fall in line with that. And you know, I like the fact that now Consultant.com is in our possession. In fact, I'm not going to disclose anything here, but there's a lot of businesses, big behemoth info businesses that are in my possession. Those I've kind of kept a little bit more quiet, or you know, maybe I'll talk about at later dates. But I like buying these legacy businesses, whether that's a practical use case with Consultant.com, or whether that's a little bit more of as a trophy, you know, something to put in my trophy cabinet to say that, okay, cool, you know, you guys, respectfully, like, you guys want to talk, or you guys want to put us in the same bracket. As I said, this is just my humble opinion. I don't think we're in the same bracket. I think what I've been able to do in the info space, no one has been able to do. You know, what I think I've been able to do in the info space, and by the way, I'm not leaving. I see a lot of people in the info space and they're like, they want to get out of it. And I actually recorded another video on this just off the dome recently. It really breaks my heart seeing so many people leave the info space when I just think this is like the most beautiful space on earth. Unfortunately, I think it's historically been one of the most villainized spaces on earth, unfairly. And I talk about that in one of the other videos. But the third reason is I like the fact that in my own info business outside of Consultant.com, you know, we've pretty much done in the first 6 months the entire profit of the legacy of Consultant.com in the first 6 months. And I kind of like that. And I just feel like I want to restore Consultant.com to not only its former glory, because I think, you know, there was what was seen and then there was what was actually going on behind the scenes. I want to make Consultant.com truly a legacy business, aka a business that will be here in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, you name it. The info space, knowledge space, coaching space is only getting bigger. I think you are an absolute fool to try to get out of the space right now. And in a year, a few years, 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, I want there to be no conversation about what is the best consulting, the best advisory firm on earth for our industry. Consultant.com is that. And by the way, there's a lot of stuff that I wish I could talk about. I can't disclose quite yet. Yeah, we've been working on a lot of stuff, and there's some more very, very, very big announcements coming. And we have the A team. We have the best team on earth when it comes to our industry. And I have so much love for our industry. And I said, I watch everything and I see everything. I think a lot of times people really don't understand how involved I truly am in this space. And whether you have 147 followers on X, or you have a YouTube channel with 237 subscribers, trust me, I know what you say, I know what you're talking about. I know every single thing that goes on in this industry. And in the last 6 to 12 months, I've truly seen a exodus from this industry, which to me, as I said, makes no sense. And if you want to leave this industry and leave more profit and more impact for the rest of us, so be it, go for it. But me as your advisor through this video, I think it's very, very foolish. I think it truly is very, very foolish. I think you're making the biggest mistake possible. And I hear a bunch of people in the info space talk to me and tell me, oh, but no one serious does info, this, that. I have calls every single week with some truly heavy hitters. In fact, I had a call just a few weeks ago with someone on Shark Tank, worth $500 million. And he was asking me, hey, listen, I want to get into info space. How would I go about it? And I have calls like that all the time. I have multi-billionaires that want to get into info space. I had a call with one of the top real estate firms in the world that wants to launch an info arm. So I think this market will only continue to get bigger and bigger. I love this industry, info products, digital products, coaching, knowledge businesses, you name it. And as I said, almost right now, it feels like kind of like the dot-com bubble where, you had in 2020, 21, 22, even a portion of 23, like the info industry grew, and then now it feels like it's contracting slightly. And I kind of look at the dot-com bubble, which is, maybe it was easy for some people at some point, but to quit and get out of it, look at the numbers, look at the fact that this is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, and our market will triple in the next 5 to 7 years. Like, that's insane. And by the way, I actually think it's going to grow much bigger than that, because I think the collapse of the traditional education systems is going to happen quicker and quicker and quicker, especially universities. And by the way, that money needs to flow somewhere. So all of that to say, those are the main 3 reasons why I bought consultant.com. Number 1, for the intellectual property and the fact that I do think it makes my historic product stronger. And I like the fact that, throughout the years, I've been able to give back to my customers and, spend a lot of money to give them bonuses even years after buying. So that's number 1. Number 2 is I thought consultant.com as a domain and as a brand would be a very fitting rebrand for our B2B offer, for our advisory offer. And the last reason was really just, I thought it was poetic. And I know that maybe if you see me on my main channel, I'm a master, an absolute master magician at dumbing myself down. I'm an absolute master magician of only showing people what needs to be shown in that moment. I can tell you right now, I'm the most competitive person you will ever meet. I think, as I said, I hear people tell me all the time, long-term thinking. I can tell you right now, when it comes to long-term thinking, I can sit on something for a year. I mean, there's been things I've sat on for multiple years and still never revealed. And I know when is the right time to release what and discuss what and talk about and what chess moves are the next moves to make. And I felt like now was a good time to make this chess move. And I think right now, more than ever, the info coaching knowledge business needs saving. There's just so many misunderstandings in this industry. There is no other place to go to than consultant.com, the new consultant.com, because we are the only ones that understand how to run these businesses. And by the way, when you are not only making millions, and sometimes, for example, in our case, tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars of free cash flow, what do you do with that money? Because there are so few businesses where you end up in this situation, and now you truly are your own investment fund. Because launching a fund, getting involved in a VC, you are your own fund, okay? And you need to start thinking a little smarter and acting a little smarter. And as I said, I wish there's 101 things that I could talk about and that would just totally flip people's perception of certain things on its head if they really truly knew what was going on. But as I said, with running the risk of revealing too much here in today's video, I will leave it at that. All I want to say is that for any of you guys who are watching, who are in the info space, in the knowledge business, in the coaching business, I want to first of all commend you. This could be an hour rant that I have. I think that our industry truly is one of the most villainized industries in the world. I think the way that we have to operate, now I understand there's a lot of bad apples, and unfortunately it just ruins it for the rest of us. There's a lot of bad apples that have no refund policy, do very, in my opinion, shady money back guarantees that are terms and conditions based, which I'm really not a fan of. Yeah, there's some bad apples. Let's not talk about those. For those of you guys who run things ethically and morally, I just want to commend you, because as I said, I just think our space is so overly villainized. And by the way, I think our space in the next 3 to 5 years will not be that, because all the same people who 3 years ago or 5 years ago were like, oh, I would never launch a blah blah this that info offer, they're launching one. And you go look at Spotify right now, they have a courses tab. That was beta. I don't know if it's rolled out for every single person, but you have Spotify launching courses, you have BBC launching courses, you have all these businesses launching coaching offers, info offers. The market will only get bigger and bigger. And if you stay now, while some of the dummies are leaving, are exiting, I'm telling you right now, you will be rewarded for it. So I want to commend you. I want to give you props. And yeah, I guess that's my little brain dump on why I bought consultant.com, the future of it. Unfortunately, there's about 30 to 40% of it that I can't quite yet talk about. I mean, this has been in the works for about the past 2 months and was finalized about 2 months ago. But the advisory arm, the consulting arm, that's only one part of the business. There's another very, very, very big part of the business, which, as I said, I'm not going to disclose in today's video. But with that being said, I just want to tip my hat off to you, let you know that if you are in this industry, I respect you, and I very, very, very much look forward to you hopefully either continuing to, or I guess for a lot of you guys, especially those of you who are still living in revenue land, hopefully starting to build a ridiculously profitable and also fulfilling business in this industry. All right. Lots of love.